All right, today we are diving deep into two of life's most overlooked but absolutely essential kingdoms, algae and fungi. You see them all the time, but they're not plants, they're not animals, so what are they? Well, they shape our entire world in ways you've probably never even thought about. Let's get into it. So, let me ask you something right off the bat. When you see organisms like these, where do they fit? I mean, in that big tree of life. Are they plants? Maybe animals? Or are they something else entirely? Nailing this down is the perfect way to kick off our journey. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to explore the amazing world of algae. Then we'll get properly introduced to the fungi kingdom. After that, we'll put them head to head and see how they stack up. We'll even see what happens when they team up to form lichens, which is super cool. And finally, we'll look at the huge impact they have on our world, both the good and the bad. First up, algae. You know, the best way to think about them is like they're nature's tiny, super efficient solar panels. Seriously, they are the producers at the bottom of so many food chains, just quietly powering everything from a tiny pond to the vast oceans. Okay, before we go any further, we need to talk about the big picture group that both algae and fungi belong to, Thallophyta. The key word here is thallus, and it's simpler than it sounds. It just means these organisms have a really basic body. Think about it. No complicated plumbing like xylem or phloem, and definitely no true roots, stems, or leaves. This is biology stripped down to the essentials. So what really makes an alga an alga? Well, the number one thing to remember is that they're autotrophic. That's a fancy way of saying they make their own food, just like plants do, using chlorophyll to soak up sunlight. Their cell walls, also very plant-like, made of cellulose. And as you'd expect, you'll find them pretty much anywhere there's water. And they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You've got these tiny, single-celled swimmers, like Chlamydomonas. Then you've got the filamentous ones, these long thread-like algae, such as Spirogyra. And maybe the most important of all, you have the nitrogen fixers, like Nostoc. These guys can literally pull nitrogen out of the air and turn it into something other living things can use. That is an absolutely critical job in any ecosystem. Okay, time to switch gears and talk about our second kingdom, fungi. Now, if algae are the producers, then fungi, well, they are nature's master recycling crew. They are the cleanup team for the entire planet, breaking down all the dead stuff and returning those vital nutrients right back into the soil. Now, fungi are also thallophytes, so they've got that same simple body plan as algae. But here is the massive difference. They are heterotrophic. They absolutely cannot make their own food. Instead, they do something amazing. They secrete enzymes out into their environment to break stuff down, and then they just absorb the nutrients. It's a totally different strategy for survival. Let's break down what makes fungi so incredibly unique. First off, no chlorophyll means zero photosynthesis. But get this, their cell wall isn't made of cellulose like a plant's. It's made of chitin. That's the same tough material you find in the exoskeletons of bugs and crabs. And when they store energy, they do it as glycogen, which is what animals do. Their whole body is basically a huge network of these tiny threads called hyphae, and that's how they spread out and find food. And their impact on us? It is just massive, and it goes in every direction. I mean, we eat them, like the common mushroom, agaricus. They literally save our lives. Penicillium is the source of the world's first antibiotic. And, yeah, they can also make us sick. Trichophyton, for instance, is the fungus that's responsible for ringworm. Okay, so we've met both sides. Now it's time for the showdown. Honestly, putting them side by side like this is the absolute best way to make the differences stick in your brain. And this table just lays it all out perfectly. You can see the huge split, right? Algae are the producers. They're like plants, making food with chlorophyll and storing it as starch. Fungi are the consumers, almost more like animals in some ways. They absorb their food, have no chlorophyll, and store their energy as glycogen. And even their cell walls tell the story. Plant-like cellulose for algae versus that tough insect-like chitin for fungi. This right here is your ultimate cheat sheet for telling them apart. So we've just spent all this time talking about how different they are. But what happens when these two complete opposites decide to team up? Well, you get one of the most incredible and tough-as-nails partnerships in the entire natural world. They form a lichen, and a lichen isn't really a single organism. It's a composite, a permanent team-up between a fungus, that's the mycobiont, and an alga, the phycobiont. It's the textbook definition of symbiosis. So, how does this symbiotic contract actually work? Well, it's a brilliant setup. The alga is basically the live-in chef,
constantly whipping up food through photosynthesis for both of them. And in return, the fungus provides the house, a tough, protective structure that holds onto water and grabs minerals from the environment. Because they work together, they can live in the most extreme places you can imagine, like bare rock or a frozen wasteland, where neither one could ever survive on its own. And this partnership has some amazing consequences for the rest of the world. Lichens are true pioneers. They can grow on solid rock, and over hundreds of years, they slowly break it down to create the very first bits of soil for other plants to grow in. They're also like nature's little air quality sensors. They're super sensitive to pollution, so if you see a lot of lichens around, it's a great sign the air is clean. And some of them, like Usnea, even produce powerful antibiotic compounds.
All right, let's bring this all home. We've seen what algae and fungi are, but what's their direct impact on our lives? As we're about to see, they can be our greatest allies and sometimes our most difficult enemies.
On the friend side of the ledger, the list of benefits is just enormous. Fungi give us world-changing medicines like penicillin and, of course, food like mushrooms. Algae give us everything from important food additives to crucial ecosystem services like that nitrogen fixation we talked about. And get this, algae are a primary source of vitamin K in our food chain. They are truly fundamental to our health and the health of our planet.
But there's definitely a dark side. Fungi are behind some devastating plant diseases, like the late blight of potato that actually caused the Irish potato famine. They cause human diseases that range from just annoying, like ringworm, to really life-threatening conditions. And as we all know too well, they are the #1 culprits when it comes to food spoiling all over the world. You know, it all comes back to this one idea. They really are the unseen architects of our world. Algae act as the foundation, producing the energy and oxygen that so much of life relies on. And fungi? They're the ultimate recyclers, making sure that the building blocks of life are never ever wasted, but are put right back into the system to be used all over again.
And that brings us to one last kind of intense thought. If all the algae and all the fungi just vanished tomorrow, what do you think would collapse first? Our entire ecosystems or our medicine cabinets? It's a powerful question, and it really drives home just how deeply our own world is connected to these amazing unseen kingdoms. Thanks for tuning in.